Can we talk about your new album?
Oh yeah,
Congratulations.
sure, of course. Thank you very much. It was it took a lot out of me for the year
Yeah.
and a half or so that I was working on it. So I'm kind of glad it's over with to a degree. Um, but it was a lot of fun to work on, but of course also stressful at the same time. But I'm glad it's finally seeing the light of day.
If you don't mind me asking, what was stressful about it?
Oh, pretty much everything. Does this sound the way that I think it should sound? Does this mix sit correctly? And this is just the musical aspects, by the way. Um,
Yeah.
the Obviously we talked about the mixing, and just trying to do something that I felt was an improvement on things that I had done in the past, because that tends to be something I really strive for. Each album I want to be a noticeable improvement, whether that's in production quality or in better melodies or harder sound. Um, I put a lot of emphasis on trying to make those improvements from album to album, and I'm not always successful. But that's something I go for. Now, when it comes to like the lyrics and the concept of the album, that was even harder because I was trying to get some things out that were very personal in a way that would make sense to other people, um, but not be overly or overwrought, I guess. Um, it was an expression of a lot of stuff that had been building up over a long period of time, and it just felt like it needed to come out in a healthy way.
Mm,
Which, of course, I think music is probably the healthiest way that you can get out some of your frustrations. Um,
yeah.
so that was a big part of it too. Was just kind of sitting in those emotions that I wanted to get out and describing them. I guess when they're not something that's really enjoyable to sit with or describe. I guess.
Yeah.
So that was what was so rough about it.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, I feel like when I went into the rabbit hole of the album, like it felt very cinematic to me. It felt like it was a story. So I really felt like I was curious, like, did you have this all in mind? Could you see this in your mind as a story that was unfolding?
To a degree, yes. This one is
Yeah.
not like a concept album, but I wanted it to be consistent throughout, um, and make sense from beginning to end, as a ride inside the mind of somebody that had been through a lot of trauma and the different ways that they kind of coped with it, because there were multiple ways to do so, and finally culminating in kind of this rebirth of humanity at the very end in the last track. So that was absolutely intentional, but it wasn't the same thing as the album before, where it was fully a concept album with a full narrative arc and everything like that. Um, Although there are some narrative arcs on Enmity, particularly Ballad of the Renegade is a story that represents some things, but it's still supposed to be like an outlaw type story, old west dark comedy type of thing. And I don't know where that came from. That was just when I started working on it. I was like, you know what? I want to add some western sounds and elements to this. No idea why. It was just what was in my heart at the
Yeah.
time. It's what I
Yeah.
felt like some of these tracks should sound like. So I started experimenting with it, and I think Ballad of the Renegade was one, and then Unwanted was the other. And I had the most fun working on those because it was something that I had never really tried before, and something where I used a harmonica. I'd never used a harmonica before, and I can't stand harmonicas. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try something that I usually would hate and see how it goes, and ended up using it, and I think it worked.
I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting is just it's like I feel like the way you're describing it, it feels like you were really playing with a lot of subconscious like inspiration. Um, yeah.
Yeah, the cinematic and the orchestral parts of it, that's something I've been trying to do for a while, and that is the main thing that I've been trying to work on improving, because I don't have a full orchestra at my fingertips or a full choir, right? So I'm kind of dependent on the technology of the time to simulate that, and that technology is getting better. Which means that it sounds a lot bigger and more real these days than it did on, material back from the early 2000s that I was working on. It was just a technological limit, and so I think that's considering how much better that technology in producing those types of sounds has improved. That's why I focused a bit more, even I guess even more heavily with On Enmity on the orchestral sounds and the choirs and things like that. It's because I had something that sounded much realer, without having to go and have an actual full orchestra.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's so cool that there's a lot of tools I think that have been catching up with our brains. Um, yeah. And I think as you push the envelope, especially like you were mentioning, incorporating like the Western style and Western inspiration, which was out of the blue,
Yeah,
um,
for
you
me too.
know,
Me too. Yeah.
yeah, but so cool, like really, really cool. I love that it's like a bringing in of different worlds.
Yeah. Um, I mean the different sounds that I try to use I'm trying to make them part of the story. So I want the sound design to also reflect what the track is about. Sometimes I'm successful in that, sometimes I'm not. But obviously the sound design for something like Unwanted, I think I threw like a rattlesnake in there just to be really cliche. Like I think that's buried in there at the very beginning, just to add that kind of that sound element that adds a certain feeling to the track too. So I love doing things like that. I love writing themes.
Yeah,
Uh, like when I think of themes, I think of the Superman theme and the theme for Otis in the first Superman movie. I love each character has their own theme, so I'm really interested in writing music kind of like that, which is obviously what I did completely with the the album from 2023 was all themes. Um,
yeah,
but this one, it was definitely, I think, an improvement over anything I've done, in terms of production quality, and how intricate I was able to go and
yeah.
how detailed I was able to go. So another reason why it took quite some time is because I could do a lot more, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I mean, I was curious, like when you, 'cause I love that you were so passionate about the sound. Like, how do you know when it's done?
You don't. I never do. I never do. It's never done. But it's got to get to a point where it's good enough.
Mm,
Um, some people I know some artists they'll build out tracks. They'll start with kind of a skeleton, right, and then they'll just add the details from there. I don't do that, and I'm not sure exactly why. But I start from the very beginning with as much detail as I possibly can put into it, and go from there, just continuously building on throughout the entire track. There's no skeleton structure underneath that I'm working with. It's all written kind of at once,
yeah,
um, which is another way I also draw. I used to quite a bit. I wanted to be a comic book artist when I was a kid. Um, and a lot of the ways they teach you to draw is they'll teach you to draw this kind of little basic human shape, right, and then fill in the details. I didn't do that at all either. I just started with the eyes and went from there, filling in all the details as I went. So that just might be, my personality, I guess. I don't start with the bare bones. I just go all in. Don't know if that's good or not, but it
well, it's your way of being, which is amazing. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to give a shout out to our friends in the chat. Lost Signal was giving you some love and saying such a killer
Oh,
album.
hey
Um,
Charles.
and also
Man.
suggesting Fleshfield Unplugged All Harmonica Edition on vinyl 2027.
Done, done. Charles, you're playing the harmonica.
Yes.
It will be amazing.
Have
We're
you
going to
ever
be
done this? Have you
I'm
done
sorry, go
the
ahead.
harmonica? Have you done the harmonica live?
Not at all. I've never
No.
done that track live, but
Okay.
that may be happening soon with Charles. We've got our show together coming up. Um, in June, on June 4th, at the Renegade in Arlington, Virginia. So Fleshfield and Lost Signal will be playing. We're both really looking forward to that. We set it up a little while ago. Um, we got to see each other again for the first time in years and years at Dark Force Fest, and it was just great to see him. He's so talented, and as you know, I adore his lyrics. And hey, thanks, Charles, for being you and being here.
That's so awesome. I'm excited for your show. I wish I lived on the other side of the world.
Well,
But I'm
there's
sure
some
it's
things
going to
that
be
are better about the
fantastic.
West Coast. Trust me, I've lived on both.
That's so cool. Are you planning on doing any other shows, or is this like the one you're just focusing on for now?
So after Dark Force Fest, which was the first show in 20 years, I've got Rick Furr from Missalin and James from Panic Lift in the band for live performances, and we were all amped up to do more. But I was also very aware that Dark Force Fest is kind of its own thing, right? And not every one of our shows is going to be like Dark Force Fest was, because it was awesome, it was amazing. We were all pumped, afterwards. So I was like, let's take a breather. Let's see how kind of a one-off show would go. Then we talked to Charles, and Charles was like, "Want to do one together?" We're like, "Yep, yes, we do." So this is kind of a let's see how it goes thing. There won't be any tours. I'm not able to do that logistically with a family and a full-time job, but one-off shows are definitely something that we're considering and that we will do. It's just they're going to be fairly few and far between. I can't go on tour anymore. I'm too old at this point. I hurt myself.
I think it's awesome though that you're still playing live and you're playing festivals and I mean Dark Forest Fest, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So,
It was it
yeah.
was a it's a singular experience. We played a few festivals, but Dark Force Fest was just so cool being able to stay at the sleep at the same venue with all the bands go. You could go up and you could take a nap and you could come back down and see what
Yeah.
was going on. It's a cool atmosphere. Um, and we started, I think not even 30 seconds into our set, the fire marshal had to stop us from playing because I guess the sub bass, once it kicked in, the opening track started like vibrating the rigging covers in the ceiling, and they started falling off.
Oh my
So they
gosh.
had to stop the performance. The guy with the ladder had to come out and go up and try to fix it, and then we had to start all over again. So the crowd was very understanding about that. It was really cool of them, but it was just kind of fun to like destroy the room within the first 30 seconds of your show. Right. So that was something that will live in memory for quite some time.
Well, you mentioned that you hadn't played in 20 years, so Dark Force was your return to live
Yeah.
music. Yeah.
Yeah, Jet reached out after the 2023 album and said, "Hey, are you interested in doing this?" And I was like, "Well, I don't have a band, so I got to find one first." And I've been out of the scene for years. I didn't really know too many people other than the few people that I still remembered. And
Yeah.
Rick was one of them. And Panic Lift had just done a remix for me. And Jet was like, "Well, James is local to Jersey. Um, so he might be able to do it." So I reached out to James, and James was like, "Hell yeah, let's do it." So, and I picked the right guys. We only had one rehearsal before the show,
Yeah.
and they were just consummate professionals. Like they had everything worked out before we even set up to rehearse. They were all ready to go. They were fantastic, and they were a lot of fun on stage too. Um, Rick was silly on stage, which I loved. It was funny because James was very concerned about me knocking over his equipment during the performance and reminded me to be careful around the stuff. I was like, "That's okay, man. I won't." So there are multiple pictures of our performance at Dark Force Fest. We can see James looking at me like, "Don't mess up my stuff, man." So it was a blast. And then we had Jennifer Parkin from Area play the track that she did with me on stage, and that was a lot of fun too. As soon as she came out on stage, just this sea of cell phones came up to record her. It was amazing. She was great. So all in all, it was a fun time. I'd love to go back um,
Yeah.
whenever they'll have us back.
Well, you mentioned before the stream, Mira Luna.
Mhm.
So you've done like shows across the pond as well.
Yeah.
Um,
We
yeah.
did a show, or actually, we did a tour with L'Homme Mortel in 2000, I think that tour was. Um, it was a full month-long tour. We had tour buses, with the beds up on top and the galley down below with like a PlayStation. Um, and it was a blast, but I also have this horrible stage fright. So every night was me trying to work myself up to be confident enough to get on stage. Um, but if I recall, when we first got, I think we flew into Frankfurt and stayed at the record label owner's house for a day. And then he drove us to a rest stop where we were going to meet the buses and pack in. And this was about 6 o'clock in the morning. And the first thing that the backliners did when they came up and introduced themselves was hand me a beer at 6 o'clock in the morning. So that should tell you how the rest of the tour went. Um, it was a lot of fun, but it got pretty wild. But it was a fantastic experience. Met a lot of great people. Um, but by the last three shows, my keyboard player, his name is Matthias, um, for all of our Europe performances, he played all the keyboards. He would have to, I'd walk off the stage, and then he'd have to carry me back to the green room to ice down my knees and my shins because I just beat the crap out of myself on stage for so many shows in a row that by the end, my knees were swollen, my ankles were swollen. It was just in constant pain up there and trying to continue to beat the crap out of myself every single night. So I learned a little bit of a lesson from that one that I probably shouldn't continue to do that, and maybe take it a little easier from time to time. So I've calmed down a bit since then. But that was a
Hmm.
blast. And then we did Summer Darkness in Utrecht, Netherlands in 2005, a few days before Mariluna. And then we went and played Mariluna. And we played in the airline hangar. I think the capacity there was about 5,000 people and it was packed. So that was the most people we had ever played in front of, and still is to this day. And I looked out at this sea of people and felt like I was going to puke. And then we started performing, and that's exactly what I did like five times behind the drum riser where there was a trash can. I think because I was so terrified in front of that giant audience of people, bigger than we'd ever played before. And I was telling you before the show at Dark Force Fest, Jet was kind enough to put a trash can by the stage for me just in case for Dark Force Fest. But at this point, the stage fright doesn't seem to be as big as a problem as it was back then. I'm older and I've dealt with things much tougher than performing live, so it makes that seem a bit easier and less scary at this point. But yeah, Maryland was the last one we did. That was our last show before Dark Force Fest in 2020. And that was 2005, so almost
Wow,
exactly 20 years.
that's amazing. Well, when you were stepping back into the world of live music, like I because you had already had experience, did you feel like you were stepping into it in a new way though after having taken so much time?
I wasn't sure what to expect.
Yeah.
But I wasn't as worried about it. Before I would have been frothing at the mouth just with worry, and anxiety about it. But this time, I mean, I knew that I had really professional guys working with me. I didn't have to worry about them. All I had to worry about was myself. And I
Yeah.
practiced multiple times. I was fine. And at this point in my life, it's just I don't sweat the little things as much as I used to. So it felt like stepping right back into a degree, but with more confidence, which was
Mm,
nice and
yeah.
less fear. So yeah, it didn't really feel too new. It just felt like putting on that old glove that used to be too tight, but now it fits for some reason. So
I love that. I think that's brilliant that I mean, you're mentioning kind of like experience and wisdom that you were able to like incorporate and just be like, actually, I got this. And,
yeah.
yeah, from the clips I saw from Dark Force Fest, it looked amazing. So,
Oh,
yeah,
I mean, it's always better in person than from when you're watching it on videos, but because there's always the beat that you can actually feel in your chest
Yes.
and the excitement of the crowd, which is not always captured as well on the videos. But I went back and I watched a couple of those, and I was really concerned because I couldn't hear myself very well in the monitors. I was actually listening to myself more in the house than the monitors to try to
Mm.
stay on note when I was performing, and it I didn't do as badly as I thought. Like when I was up there, I was like, I can't really hear myself. I'm probably all over the place, but I think just practicing it that many times while I'm driving to work, every morning yelling in the truck on my way to work, um, kind of work those into muscle memory for me. So it wasn't as bad as I initially thought it was. I was a little concerned at first, but ended up being happy with
It's Liberated, by the way, says, looking forward to seeing you in June. Hopefully, you'll be less busy this time.
it. I doubt I'll be less busy, but I will do my best to make myself less busy. But yeah, please, that'll be great. Please come in June. We're going to be having a lot of fun, I think, at this show in particular because it's Charles and me, and we've known each other for so long. It should be
That's
good.
awesome. That's awesome. So, you guys have played shows together before?
Um, I think we did one with Lost Signal a while back. I don't really have a good memory of it though. I don't have a good memory of many shows from that era, and that's not because I was, on all kinds of drugs or anything like that at the time. It's just my brain when something new comes in, something else has got to go. And at this point, like there's so many things. It's amazing to think about. We live so long, and we remember so little about our lives. There's so much more, hundreds, maybe 1,000 times more that we experience that we just forget. It just leaves our mind, and only certain things stay. Sometimes they're great things, sometimes they're horrible things, and sometimes they're things that make absolutely no sense. Like why am I remembering this when I've forgotten like this important part of my childhood with my father, but I remember this stupid thing? Yeah, that's memory for you. So
Yeah.
yeah, we played with a lot of different bands. My very first show that we played was nerve wracking because it was with C-Tech. So that was the band that we opened for first. So like Jean-Luc Demeyer from Front 242 and Mark Heel was there. And it was our very first show ever, never done a live performance before. Um, and it was just me and Ryan, who was the female vocalist in the band at the time. This is before we had been signed and everything like that. So it was, but it went fine. It was not the greatest show in the world, but I got to meet Jean-Luc Demeyer and Mark. Um, and so that was kind of an interesting way to open our live performance era, was by opening for a band that I really liked like that and really respected at the time. So that was really cool.
Gosh, talk about like almost like jumping in feet first, right? Just,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. You're not just dipping your feet in; you're just getting thrown in the pool
yeah,
at that point.
exactly.
Yeah, whether you like it or not. Yeah,
Well, did you know like really how to approach? Because with electronics, you have, gosh, so many different avenues and different ways that you can approach it. Did you have kind of an idea of like how you wanted your live show to feel?
yes. I wanted it to feel very raw. And that's one of the reasons I ended up beating the crap out of myself on stage and everything carried on. Um, I didn't want to do a whole lot of theatrics, just because I didn't have any good ideas for them. I just wanted to be very honest and raw, and this is me, take it or leave it type of thing. So I didn't have a excuse me, whole idea of. I guess I didn't really have a plan going in. I
Yeah.
just was like, I'm just going to be me, and kind of continued that. We never really did too many theatrics. We just kept it aggressive. But at this point in my life, I'm not able to physically be that aggressive as I used to be. Um, so it's probably a little more contained than it used to be. Because I do remember, I think a show in DC years ago, smashing a MIDI keyboard. And it was like throwing the pieces out into the audience. That's not going to happen anymore. That James will get really mad if I smash his MIDI keyboard. He already he already was really worried about me breaking stuff on stage.
Yeah,
I
I
think
was gonna say, I was like, you already did sort of the James look, so I don't imagine that's would be.
yeah, I think he'd be pretty mad at me about that. And, sorry, James. It was just what was in my heart. I needed to smash something at that point. Turned out to be your keyboard.
Did you play any live shows before Fleshfields, or was Fleshfield like your first project to dive in like that?
So the only time that I had played live before that was with my high school bands. So I had two of them. One was like this. It was kind of punk, but I did bass on the keyboards for it. It was called Vitamin. It was just me and a bunch of friends from high school. And then another band that was more in the industrial realm. It was a couple keyboard players, and we used like a drum machine, and had a guitarist. And so we had a battle of the bands at my high school. And so I played with both of those bands. And so the more punkish band, we got first place, and the more industrial band, we got second place, which was pretty cool because I got a little bit of a big head about it at the time. I was like, I'm the only thing in common between these two bands. Look at me, Mr. Fancy Pants. Um, and then years ago, or I'm sorry, not years ago, but years later, my son plays in a band at this place called Rock. So he plays bass in a band, and they had their first like elementary school age battle of the bands a couple years ago, and he won first place. His band won first place. That was just something we could bond over. It's like, yep, Daddy's first battle of the bands, we won. Your first battle of the bands, you win.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
oh,
pretty adorable.
I love that full circle.
Yeah, I did too at the time. I, one of the other dads, when they announced, which band won, like, guy, I don't know him. I've never met him before in my life. We're both just standing there watching the band, and he starts cheering, I start cheering, and we just give each other this big hug. We don't know each other from Adam. We're just like, yeah, our kids won. Give me a hug. Put it right there, buddy. Uh, that's what being a parent's
Oh,
about, I guess.
that's awesome.
It was cool. Yeah.
Lost Signal is saying you have played together several times, early 2000s when you were literal kids.
We were.
Um, yes, yes,
Yeah, I was. Our first album came out before I was even 21.
yeah.
On Inception Records, and I'm obviously Charles remembers Inception Records. Yeah, we were kids, and I started this when I was a kid, right? In high school. I had those other bands, but I also was doing my own thing, um, and working on my own solo music while I was playing in those other bands too. And obviously, those bands didn't last, but my solo stuff just kept going. Um, and I think, if I remember correctly, the first gear I had was just like this Yamaha keyboard with no MIDI, um, and I had a guitar, but it only had three strings. But I don't remember if I broke the strings to get it to only have three strings, or if it came that way because I borrowed it from a friend. And eventually, I got a 4-track recorder and a little drum machine. Um, and so I would program the drum machine, record that on one track, so mono, not stereo, and then record live keyboards with no MIDI, just me playing live over the second track. And then if there was more keyboards, I could do over the third, or I could add that little 3-string guitar in there on the third track, and then vocals on the fourth track. And it sounded awful. It was terrible, but that's you got to start somewhere. Um, and then I think I met Ryan in '97, I think, and asked her to join the band to do female vocals. And we put together a demo. We actually went to a for Realsy's recording studio at the time and put together this crappy demo, sent it out, no reactions at all. Didn't hear back from anybody. Um, and then around the same time, I was also in this chat group on AOL. we're talking a long time ago, called Industrial Baby, where I met Tom Shear from Assemblage 23. Um, and Tom eventually basically became Tom and Scott Sturgis from Converter and Pain Station kind of became almost like mentor figures for me, kind of showing me how to do things, providing suggestions on gear and how to properly use it and what I should and should not do when I'm writing. Um, and that was essential to helping me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really important to have somebody that can kind of take you under their wing. And Tom and Scott are the two people I felt kind of did that for me. Um, and just worked with Tom again. A couple months ago, he's doing guest vocals on a track for our deluxe edition of On Enmity. So that's another full circle thing that we like to talk about. But from there, then I got a hard disk recorder that gave me a lot more tracks to be able to mess with. So we put together a new demo, sent it out, and then we started getting some responses. We heard back from the guys from Rostava. I don't know if you know that label. They're not around anymore. They weren't interested, but they said, you're getting there. And then I heard from both Inception, which was a brand new record label at the time, no bands, just starting out, and then Gashed Records, which is the one that Assemblage 23 started off on. And they both offered us something. Ultimately, we went with Inception because as the only band on that label, we'd get all the attention, right? Um, and that was absolutely the case. And Chris did a really good job promoting us. And the first album came out in '99, and I was 20 years old. Like I guess I couldn't even drink to celebrate at that time. And from there on, I think that's around the time that I first started talking to Charles because he ended up signing with Inception Records as well. And now another full circle thing where we are back together again this much later in our lives is really cool.
It's so cool because I actually am gonna have Charles in a couple weeks here on Unwritten Rules, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
have Tom the week after.
Oh,
So,
okay. Yeah,
yeah,
you're blowing my
I'm
mind here.
I'm like so excited I get to talk to all y'all.
Ask Tom about Industrial Baby from AOL and
Okay,
see if he has any good memories about that. He may not.
I will definitely ask for sure.
Or you could ask him about the first time that I met him and he didn't know who I was and thought I was just some stranger that was following them. Because we had never met before in real life. And he and I think Scott Sturgis was there. They came down to a label, a record store in Columbus, Ohio, where I was living at the time, called World Record. Had a great like industrial music section. And I don't remember exactly how we planned to meet there, but I walked in, saw the two of them there, and kind of went up, and started talking to them. I don't think they recognized who I was or recognized that we were supposed to meet there. So they just thought I was some little guy following them around outside of the record store after they left. Until finally I explained, no, 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 I'm Ian. We've been talking for a while. You might not even remember that, but I certainly remember that.
Talking about the random memories that you do remember.
Right, the random things you do remember. Because I remember Tom Shear specifically held up a Skinny Puppy CD in the record store. I was like, have you guys ever heard of these bands? Are these guys any good? You know anything about them? Just as a joke, right? And my brain remembers that, but not going fishing with my dad in 1984 or whatever. But it's just how it works. Things.
Yeah, funny brains are funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we
Well, I
were
think
sorry. Go ahead.
it's just I think it's just really amazing that you've been a part of this community and you guys are all still friends. You know.
Well, we haven't talked in a while, but anytime he reaches out, I'll reach right out back to him. Charles, I hadn't seen in years. Caught up with him a bit at Dark Force Fest. So yeah, we all. I mean, we're not going to each other's weddings or anything like that, but we're always willing to help each other out when needed. I mean, because we do have that bond that we developed back then that hasn't changed at all, right? So
Yeah.
it's a good thing to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like that's really a really deep ethos in the music community. It is a community.
Yes,
So, yeah.
especially this one, where people don't just there's not as many people who are just fans of this, right? They're all participating in some way. Whether it's doing what you do a band and you do podcasts, or working for some kind of online magazine, or being in a band yourself, running a small record label. I mean, doing artwork for bands. There's everybody's involved in some way. There's very few people who aren't doing something, at least in my experience. Maybe it's just the area that I came up in this genre in, but that's the way it's seemed to me for a long time, which is really, really cool. It's
Yeah.
a big, almost organism working together to produce really cool stuff, and it's been an important support structure for me throughout my life, and it was really tough for me to kind of turn away from it for so long.
Yeah. I mean, I I feel like everybody that's involved in this like really loves it, and I mean, in just the short amount of time I've gotten to chat with you, I can just see how much heart that you have for your music and for this community, and so,
Yeah,
I think that's really special.
yeah. It's when I retired the band for a while, I was way too busy. I just finished up grad school out in California, um, and I was starting, a career. I didn't have enough time to dedicate to the band that I thought it deserved, and I didn't want to neglect it or only half-ass it. I wanted to be able to put everything I had into it, and it took a long time for me to get to the point again where I was like, I have enough time and enough focus to be able to do this again. It took, my gosh, I think the last thing I ever wrote was 2011.
Mm.
Um, so it took 13, 12, 13 years for me to be able to write another piece of music. So for 12, 13 years, I hadn't written a thing. And I was just bursting at the seams finally when I decided to come back. And I didn't know where to start at that point. The gear that I had been using back in the late 90s and early 2000s was pretty much obsolete, right? I mean, it still work, but it didn't have the capabilities I needed it to have. So when I started relearning how to write music with Ableton and plugins, things I wasn't used to working with, there were too many options. I was like, okay, I could do so many things. I don't even know where to start. And there were so many options that I didn't know how to fully include all the capabilities of the technology into the music. So I'm still learning, how to do that. So for the return album, like I didn't know how to do uh, automated modulation very well, and now I'm much better at it. Um, and all of the limits that I had back in the 90s and 2000s were gone, which was again really cool, but also terrifying because where do you start at that point? And when do you know something is done? If you could always add more, when you have almost unlimited memory to do what it is that you want to do. So it was a new way of looking at writing music, rather than let's try to push this limited capability to as far as I can take it to its extreme, which was how I did things before. It was okay. I have so much capability. I need to distill it down into something that's workable, so that I can actually finish something. And it took a little while, but once I started getting the hang of it, I think it took maybe 3 or 4 months for that entire album to be written, which was a very short time compared to the year and a half that it took for this last one.
Yeah. Well, what was the very first song that brought you back into the fold?
I think the very first track that I wrote was the very first track off of Voice of the Echo Chamber,
Mm.
um, which is a heavier track, but I tried to incorporate so many different things into that track, because I was bursting at the seams, that I almost feel like I tried too much in that track. And there's too much going on, and it changes too much that it loses consistency. Um, the second one I did was Arsenal. And that's when I started trying to strip things down a little bit more, saying like, okay, this first one I did, there's almost too much going on. This second one, let's strip it down and see if I can just have it, just simplify it. And I did that, and now I feel like it's too simple. I'm like, okay, I just swung the pendulum in the opposite direction too far, such as I always do. Um, but after that, it just started flowing out one track after another, finishing it in about 4 months. I don't remember if that included the vocals or not. Um, but that whole concept had been something that I had been thinking about for years. And I was like, if I ever get back into music, this is something I'd like to do. And it's a dark concept. And I was like, well, if there's ever any band that's going to cover a dark concept like this, it's probably mine. Um, and, and so I was a little worried that Metropolis Records was going to be like, oh, I don't know, Ian, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this one, but they were awesome. When I initially reapproached them, I sent them an email, and then Nina and Gail, I think, and Jim, all got back to me and said, yes, we're interested in your next album. And I told them what it was, and I sent it to them, and no issues with it whatsoever. They're like, okay, cool, let's do it. I was like, oh, great. And then came the worries about, people misinterpreting it, because that could be, it walks a very fine line. And I had to be very careful to make sure that it couldn't be misinterpreted without over moralizing, I guess,
Right.
on the album.
Hmm.
So we also did put like a disclaimer statement in the physical version of the album as well, just to be on the safe side. Um, but that album actually was not, despite the fact that the material is so dark, it wasn't as hard for me to write lyrically as On Enmity was, because On Enmity was more personal, and this one was more societal critique, um, and about things that I had, studied in grad school and a field I worked in. Um, and so I think that's probably why it was a little bit easier to write. Um, but it was, I mean, basically, it's a concept album where each track is one of those themes, like a score for a different part of the radicalization process, where somebody goes through and becomes radicalized to violence, political violence, extremist violence. Um, and I tried to get it as close to reality as possible. And it's written from the perspective of the person being radicalized, right? Which in the first place is kind of dangerous, because that actually humanizes the person. And we don't like that. We want to say this person was a monster. Only a monster could do something like this. That's not actually a fact, right? That's not actually true. So that is one thing that the album does, is kind of humanizes this horrible incident, and this horrible um, fact of life around us at this point. Um, I also wanted it to function kind of as like a modern tragedy in a way. So you
Yes.
see what the character goes through, um, and then he obviously commits his violent act, and then he goes and does death by cop, on the track Reckoning. But I also wanted, to use sound as a way to advance the story. So on a lot of the tracks, there are sounds that I added in as part of the story. For example, on Catalyst, the third track, where the guy basically has decided he's turning to violence. This track starts off with this kind of mechanical stomping, like this footstep getting closer, and this weird roar. And so that's supposed to symbolize, like, okay, the monster has arrived. Then obviously on Arsenal, I think just about every percussion sound, with the exception of the kick drum, is some kind of firearm sound, whether it's racking a slide, whether it's a gunshot. I only used firearm sounds for the drums in that, with the exception of, I think, of a couple fills. And then on Reckoning, it opens up with this, what sounds like a piece of metal kind of being dragged. And what that is basically just, somebody running a stick over a cymbal. Um, but that's supposed to sound like death coming for the main character, dragging his scythe behind him. So adding that element of cinema to it was also something that I really wanted to try. I don't think anybody noticed. Like, I noticed because I put so much thought into it, but I don't think anybody noticed any of that. But there's things like that on every single track on there. And
Mm.
I think on every single track, other than maybe one or two, there are firearms sounds from every single one of the firearms mentioned in the track arsenal. I think the only one we didn't have a 38 revolver, but all of the other guns mentioned in that track, we had friend of mine actually owns. So he sampled pieces of them for me, sent them to me, and I incorporated them dispersed throughout the album. So there was a lot of thought that went into the concept of that album. Now, whether or not I executed it very well is a different question. I was also just coming back and relearning how to do everything, right? Um, so I do cut myself a little slack there. I do think that album could have been better, but as a concept, I think it was what I had to get out of me for kind of living in that world for so long and understanding that world for so long. And it was some people want to call it a political album. I don't see it as a political album unless we want to say that mass shootings and political violence are a, a partisan thing.
Hmm.
To say that these things are bad is a partisan thing. That's not a partisan thing. It's just a moral thing. Like, are mass shootings and political violence good or bad? It, there's no political answer there, at least that I was trying to make, right?
Yeah.
So
I think it's it's interesting because like when you walk us through the deep process and putting it together, I feel like sometimes when people experience music, even if they might not know the details, they feel it, and you can really feel that in the album. I think like there's something very very visceral, like the feelings and the experiences that you have when you listen to it.
I'm glad you said that. That makes me feel a lot better because there are so many things that I worked really hard to put in there that I'm like, I don't think it's making it, you know, to the fore. And they're not necessarily designed to make it to the fore. They're just supposed to enhance the experience, right? So
Hmm.
if that's what they've
Yeah.
done, then I'm very glad to hear that. That makes me feel much
Yeah.
better. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
No.
maybe it was worth it to go that extra mile, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like, again, like some people, for instance, like when they listen to a song, they don't notice the lyrics. Some people do.
Mhm.
And same with production. Everybody listens to music, I think, in different ways. But, it's just like I feel like having that intention and that energy into the song, I'm like, no wonder it translates that way. It feels
Yeah.
like very powerful.
Yeah, that's what I tend to go for is just something that is able to evoke emotion, right? That's what I think the best music does, regardless of what that emotion is, right? And that's why I like film scores so much because that's what they're designed to do. Um, and that's why I like to incorporate that kind of stuff into Fleshfield because it's about evoking emotion most of the time, anger, right? That's my thing. Um, but there's still plenty of other emotions that you can evoke there, and um, we were talking about this before we went on, and I don't like I said I don't think I've ever even mentioned this before. Um, but one of the ways that helps me write is just simply my brain's screwed up. I have
Hmm.
synesthesia
Yeah.
where two of my senses are confused or confusing each other. So that's my visual sense and my auditory sense. So I don't just hear the music; I also see the music. And what it looks like. This is not something that happens with any sound, right? It's not like, I hear a car horn. I'm like, oh, that's green. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
It only happens with music. And when I'm listening to music, each sound has a different shape to it, a different texture, a different color, and a different way that it moves. And then you start adding the other sounds in, and they have the same type of traits and characteristics, and they all kind of blend together to make almost like a sculpture in my mind's eye, right? So I have to be very careful when I'm listening to music driving because it can get a little distracting. Um, but that is a way that when I'm writing music, it helps to say, okay, this totally screws up the sculpture. Because the way I'm seeing it in my mind's eye, there's a flaw there that I need to fix. So it's not just I don't know. I guess that's my musical superpower. Then is this the synesthesia that I have that helps me to be able to say what works and what doesn't. Now, obviously, that's my own opinion. Not everybody's going to agree with that, but I feel like I'm really fortunate to have this as a part of me because I don't want to say it makes writing easier, but it helps me in terms of direction.
Mm.
Because I know a lot of people get stuck and they're like, okay, well, where do I want to take this piece of music next? I don't know what to do next. My brain just kind of automatically builds upon that sculpture until it's finished. And I think that's probably maybe that's actually why I just put things together all at once as opposed to making the skeleton because I just
Yeah.
see it. That makes sense. That's the first time I've realized that. Thank you.
Yay!
Yeah, yeah, we
we
had a
like
revelation.
we love revelations. Yes.
Yes, I had an epiphany.
Yes, an epiphany. No, but that I imagine you know as well like it's so different in studio cuz you know you can really for the most part control your environment as opposed to in the live forum.
Yeah.
Um yeah.
Well, I mean, most of the time, almost all of our stuff is on backing tracks, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
we can't do a whole lot live without, 15 keyboard players and 3 or 4 guitars, a bass player, 12 drummers, and a full orchestra and a choir. So we're not gonna be able to do that. So most of the stuff is on backing track. Um, but I give Rick and James like full you know full freedom to do whatever they want up there. Luckily, everything they do is really cool. I'm sure at some point one of them will mess with me and do something in a live performance that is simply to mess with me, and it will work. And then we will laugh about it later. I'm sure that will happen.
Well, you
But
mentioned
those, yeah, those.
Oh, sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, I was gonna say, like when you mentioned the cinematic element, I was curious if you've had a chance to score any movies, or if you've thought about writing any, because like from your descriptions, I was very much in the story of it, so I was just curious if you've delved into that realm.
I mean, I have no. I'd love to. That'd be cool.
Hmm.
I don't think I'm good enough to well, it's not that I'm not good enough to do it. It's I'm not well known enough um, for anybody to kind of pick up on that. I have done stuff that has been in movies and video game. Well, one movie, The Mill, on Hulu, I think in the U.S., and then I think that's on Disney Plus anywhere outside of the U.S. But they just used one of the tracks at the end credits, which was still cool.
Yeah.
And they chose it because it fit the subject matter of the movie, and it worked really well. Um, the one of the tracks was also in True Blood, that HBO show about the vampires, and I've had some stuff in video games, but I've never actually gotten the opportunity to actually sit down and score something, which I think is probably why I wanted to. So I think the Voice of the Echo Chamber album and the unfinished album before that I released online. It was all instrumentals. It was called Tyranny of the Majority. That was also supposed to be kind of like a score and themes. But that one was all themes from my favorite video game at the time, which was Battlefield 2142. So I had a number of tracks there that were themes for like the Battle Walker or themes for the gunship, right? And there were never vocals added or anything like that. But that one will actually be re-released as well digitally by Metropolis sometime soon. I don't think that's on their schedule yet. But there's a couple more of the old um, remix albums now that'll be released digitally by Metropolis. So the entire back catalog should be out again, hopefully within the next year. Is
Yeah.
I guess I'll see how
That's
it goes.
amazing. That's so cool. Something to look forward to for sure.
Yeah. Um, well, I personally have had a hard time like re-releasing some of the old stuff, especially like the really old stuff, because I go back and I listen to it and all I hear is inexperience and
Mm.
flaws, right? Um, oh wow. So I know somebody that's watching right now. It was one of my best friends from high school, from my high school days, and he just messaged me 2142 because I used to play Battlefield 2142 with him. So hi, Nick.
Yay, that's awesome.
Yeah. Nick, you made me forget what I was talking about now. Thank you, sir. I have no idea what I was saying. That's fine though.
um, Well, you were saying that that it was some of it's been hard for you to
Oh,
um
right. Go back and listen to all the old stuff because all I hear is flaws
yeah,
and inexperience. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, I do understand that's where I was at the time, right? You know,
yeah.
that was what I was capable of at the time, and that was a part of learning. But I don't know. I'm the kind of person that goes back that is so self conscious about that. I can't go back and really listen to the older stuff. I can't even go back and listen to Voice of the Echo Chamber. That's only like 3 years old. I go back and I listen. I'm like, oh, I should have done something different there, something different there. I think On Enmity is the only album that, and granted, it's still fairly new, but the only one where I'm I see less flaws than any other album, and that's because I took a lot of time with it and worked so hard with it. There are still things that I go back and I'm like, I don't like these few measures here. I could have done something cooler, but overall, I think it's the album I'm most proud of in terms of production and music quality.
I think it's really awesome because like one of the things that you said early on is just, how it's always a goal of yours to always grow and obviously mission accomplished if you're able to be like, actually, I can listen to this and, it's in line with
Yeah,
something that you
which is
believe.
rare, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good feeling. Um, Now I don't know what the next stuff is going to sound like. I haven't even been thinking about it yet. I was initially, after every release, I like to do a follow-up EP with a few remixes and a few original tracks, just kind of like tradition, I guess, because I've been doing that for ages. Um, but with On Enmity, Dependent Records said they wanted to do a deluxe edition, and they wanted a second disc with which would include remixes and a couple original tracks. So that is coming out in May.
Mm.
Um, Mostly, I think most of those physical copies will be available in Europe, but Metropolis Records will be releasing some in the US, a limited number. Um, it's got like a 48-page lyric book, and that second disc. That second disc has Charles's Lost Signal remix on it, remixed by 16 Volt, remixes by Mildrada, Omen Code, and Schneider as well. It's got the new Fleshfield original track that's got Tom Shear's guest vocals on it, and it's got an all orchestral version of Unwanted. So right there, that's like the follow up EP that I normally would have planned, right? So I'm not. I know that I want to do, obviously want to do more, but I'm not sure what it looks like yet. I know there'll be some collaborations, um, but I'm taking a little time off right now and just trying to adjust my bearings and figure out what I want to do next because I feel like I've just already poured so much out of me. There's not much remaining, right? It's gotta fill back up. So
Yeah.
waiting to recharge, I guess.
It's that's all part of the process. It is because, gosh, if you were just to be like, okay, I'm gonna pour everything into this album, and then I'm just gonna go right back in. That means also that you held back, so you did pour
Yes.
everything in. Yes.
Right. No, I didn't. I poured about half, and then I was like, yeah, it's probably enough. I need to save a little bit. No, I poured everything out, so there's nothing left right now. So I've got to
Yeah.
wait for it to replenish.
Yeah.
So that's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Well, how do you go about like recharging your batteries?
Sleeping
Yeah.
and still not feeling recharged. And I took a 3 hour nap today. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna lie. It was wonderful. Um, Usually music is kind of my way to charge, right?
Yeah.
I'm very introverted, so I need to recharge outside of social situations because they tend to exhaust me. Not because I hate them or anything like that. It's just they exhaust me. Um, so I just need to be alone working on something for a little while to recharge. Now, whether that's music or something else, other things that I can do. That's kind of how it's a boring answer, but that's the answer. Like I don't
Not at all. Not at
really
all. Because I feel
just
like sometimes you ask that question to a person and they can't answer, which is fine. It is
yeah.
fine. But sometimes people are like, "Well, I don't even know how to recharge my batteries. Like, how do I do that?"
Yeah, well, that was me for a long time. I figured it out now. It's just forget about all the things that are stressing you out and just relax and do nothing for a little while. It's fine to do that. I did not like doing nothing for a long time. I was like, I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm not cleaning anything. I'm not changing the world. I'm just sitting here. Yeah, well, you need to do that sometimes. You absolutely have to do that sometimes, or you're going to burn yourself out. So I've accepted that it's okay to lie there and do nothing for a little while during the day, right? And I totally did that today. It was great.
That's awesome. And inspiring. I think it's inspiring to remind people like doing nothing is doing
Yeah,
something, I think. Yes.
yeah. It's taking a break and recharging yourself. Otherwise, you're burn yourself out. Nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely necessary.
And gosh, I mean, if you think about it, On Enmity, like it was released in February. We're in March, so it's just been a month. Um, and that's
Yeah, it's
yeah,
only been over a little a month.
yeah,
Well, it was finished a lot, ways before it was actually released. So you kind of have to sit there and wait for a release date because of the record label schedule.
yeah,
Um, I want to say I sent everything in December. Was it December or November? It was either November or December, I think. So I had to wait until March for everything to come out. And you're antsy at that point. You're overthinking about how the release is going to go and how it's going to be received. Um, and I still don't know the answer to how well it's been received because I obviously it's only been a month. So and that'll take time, particularly with an album like this. It's not an album full of dance tracks or radio friendly releases, right? It's pretty dense. So it can take a little while to sink in or not for some people. So we'll see how well it's received. I know there are definitely some people that have come to me and said I absolutely love this. I've also seen some people say like, yeah, I don't think. I think the guy's unstable. I think I did see somebody say that he sounds unstable. I'm like, don't worry, I'm okay. I'm taking my 3 hours of nap today. I'm going to be fine. Don't worry, I'm still
yes,
stable.
yes.
Let me, I got my 3 hour nap today. So yeah, I mean, different people are gonna view it in different ways, and I get that, and that's fine. You can't please everyone, so you just have to please yourself, right? You just have to. And I wanted to make sure I was happy with this before anything else, right? And I
Yeah,
wanted to make sure that I put everything into it and that I worked as hard on it as I possibly could before worrying about how are critics or fans going to receive this because I've got to make sure that I'm happy with it first. Um, and what makes me happy is not always going to make fans happy, and I get that. Like some of them may hate the fact that I used a harmonica. I get it. I never thought I'd do it either, but so you just got to make yourself happy. Make sure that you're happy. And very rarely have I ever made myself happy writing music. Most of the time, just like, why can't I make this sound cooler? Um, with, but with this album in particular, I'm more proud of this one than I've been of any other that I've released so far. And that includes Strain, which I was pretty proud of at the time when that came out. But I go back and listen to the production now, I'm just like, ugh, ouch, ooh, painful.
I think,
But
I think,
that should be the
yeah,
case, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Because
think
if I'm still at the same place I was back then, I'd be like, well, I haven't improved. So I'm
yeah,
missing the point completely.
totally. I mean, it's also interesting because you mentioned like time is so different with music because like you finished the album and so you've had your relationship with it and you've had your chapter with it and then
Hmm.
for an audience they'll be listening to and experiencing it much later, you know. It's just
Yes.
interesting how that
Yeah.
works. it's
And
it's
that's
time
that's
travel.
yeah. Yes, it is. Considering like how long ago did I write that first track? I think the first track I wrote for it was uh Indestructible. Oh, and
Hmm.
here's another thing that I want to get out real quick. Totally, totally off topic of what we are just talking about, but I remember that I wanted to
Yeah,
say something about this because
yeah.
sometimes on Spotify or even on Apple Music or on Amazon, sometimes your track names will be wrong and there's no way to change it and they'll be wrong forever. So there is the I think the 11th track on Strain has been called Epophany for how many years now? 20 something years. It's the word is epiphany. What the hell is an epophany? But somehow it ended up being epophany on these websites, right? And it's just stayed that way. Likewise, there's two versions of Indestructible on Spotify. One spelled correctly with an I, one spelled incorrectly with an A. So I'm not sure how this happens. Um, I try to make sure I spell everything correctly. Um, but that's gonna now apparently I have a song called Epophany. Anyway, that was completely off topic. But it's the first track I wrote for it was Indestructible, and that one I initially wrote for Jim Simonic for his Electronic Saviors compilation, and so that was the one I was going to give to him, and I did, and I said, I still might send you another one, and then I worked on the track called Defiance, and I sent that to Jim, and Jim was like, I like Defiance way better. You keep the other one. So I took that one back to put it on Enmity. I changed it up a little bit and still edited it a bit more. Um, so that track has been around since probably a few days after the Voice of Reason EP came out back in like April of 2024. So in terms of a time machine, yeah, that track is like really old for me, but really new for everybody else. So it is a strange feeling when you're sitting with something for that long before others can hear it. And that's the reason it's so antsy too, having waited so long to release all this stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say because also that's not even counting for the time that it's been brewing in your head, like let alone you putting it
Right.
out in the but it's
Yeah.
been brewing for so long, you know.
hmm
Yeah,
hmm
yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's just part of the creation process, I guess. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I love doing this. I needed to get back into doing this. I wasn't feeling whole for all those years that I wasn't writing music. And when I finally came back to it, it kind of gave me that peace back that helped me feel whole again.
Mm.
So it's done wonders for me in a lot of ways. It's important to have things that you can lean on like that you can go to in rough times and use that as a way to get things out. And for a long time, I didn't have that. For years, I didn't have that. I didn't have my release, and I needed it back. And I'm glad that I brought it back, and I'm glad that I brought it back in a way that made other people happy as well. Um, because I think when you're as a band, if you go out when you're considered to be at your peak, you kind of turn into almost like cult legend type of status, right? And that's cool. But then if you come back, usually that's ruined, because you're not going to be able to recreate that same feeling that your fans had when they were listening to, your older stuff. You're just not going to be able to give them the same thing, and that's a function of time, right? Their tastes have changed, your tastes have changed, and you don't want to write the same album over again. And if you do write the same album over again, you're accused of just like, well, you're just trying to do all this stuff for nostalgia reasons, right? You're not trying to push the envelope forward. So so you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't type of thing. Um, so it was worrying. It was a little worrying to me to come back after being gone so long when Strain was the last album we put out, because that album was the one that did the best,
Mm.
and tended to get all the best reviews. Like I said, now I listen to it, I'm just like flaw, flaw, flaw. But um, regardless, it was still the album that kind of brought us into the fore, I guess, within the scene. And I was worried coming back that like if I can't improve on that, there's no reason. I can still write music, but I don't have to release it. If I can't improve on that, I'm not going to come back. Um, but I thought the concept from Voice of the Echo Chamber was original enough and interesting enough that even if it didn't match the musical ambitions of Strain, that it was still worth releasing. And then finally, with On Enmity, I feel like I'm back at full strength in
Mm-hmm.
terms of writing. So years after I left off, it took me from early 2023 until now to get back to full strength. But I feel like that's where I am now. I don't want to overstate it, but we'll see. We'll see if I can muster enough for another album. We'll see if I still have it in me after this. I still will. I still will. But if it sucks, I'm not going to put it out. So it's still got to be good.
I'm excited for it because I mean, just hearing about you know the I guess the journey from going very outward into the inward. I feel like it'll be interesting to see what the next chapter will feel like. You know?
Yeah, and those two albums are kind of polar opposites in terms of what they're looking at, right?
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
said, very outward, very social critique, and then very inward. Um, I don't know what I'm going to be doing on the next one, and I'll be as interested in you, as interested as you to find that out when it happens. I mean, gosh, I got an idea now. Suddenly, is this
I'll
stupid?
be.
Okay, yeah, it's stupid. All right, I'll go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, we'll be having another discussion about that. So about that.
Yeah, that's another thing is as as you write certain things and you think they're cool at the time, it's a good idea to just leave it alone for a little while and come back to it later because sometimes you realize that was a really stupid thing you did, and I do that all the time. Like I have this great idea and I want to do this and this, and then I'll be like, okay, I've got everything set. Here's what I'm going to do. And I think about it for a day or two, and I'm like, that's really dumb. Why was I even thinking about that? No, just discard that. That happens all the time.
When you're writing an album, do you have a lot of discards or do you use all the stuff that you work on for your tracks?
So for the old stuff, I had a ton of discards. I was a I was a writing machine back in the late '90s, early 2000s. So yeah, the tracks that end up on the album were the best out of, say, for Viral Extinction. It must have been almost 100 throwaways.
Wow.
Um, for Belief Control, there were probably a couple dozen throwaways. For Strain, there were, I would say, a dozen. So it's been, as I've been getting better at writing, that number of throwaways has been getting whittled down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for Voice of the Echo Chamber, there were zero. That's because I wrote the thing just straight through, um, from beginning to end, mostly with a couple out of order, but basically from beginning to end with no throwaways in a 4 month period. Um, there was one for Voice of Reason, and I'm to the point now where for On Enmity, there were no throwaways because I didn't finish ones that I started that I didn't think were good enough. So there's a bunch of started ones that were never finished. Um, I want to say there's maybe 10 of those, but they didn't make it far enough to even be worth finishing. Um, so no throwaways for this one either, if you don't count the ones because they were never finished to begin with. Makes sense.
Well, it's so cool that you're like including, in the upcoming work, like collaborations.
Mhm.
I feel like that's a really big part of what this community is the collaborations. Like, um,
Yeah,
you know, yeah. It's like whether
yeah.
whether it's the live members or, the
Mhm.
creating in the studio as well.
Yeah, how many bands does Rick play for? Like all of them. I'm pretty sure he plays for all of them. He's going to be playing with 16 Volt at Dark Force Fest this year. Also playing with Ego Likeness, of course. He's got his other band, Missalin. He's played with pretty much every industrial band I can possibly think of. Um, so yeah, I mean, he's a well-known, and he's awesome at it, which is why everybody likes to use him, right? He's great, and he's a fun guy too. Um, Collaborating for me, on a flesh field track, I don't do much collaboration at all because I'm such a freaking control freak over these things. I would just piss off any collaborator to no end. Um, which is why I do this all myself because I'm sure that I would just annoy the crap out of the poor other person that's trying to work with me on something because I'm such a control freak over it. And I used to not be comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that now. I'm fine that this is how I am with my music. If I want to be a control
Hmm.
freak, I can be a control freak. Um, but I do like working on remixes. I do like guest vocals and or other types of collaborations too. And again, that started back the when we started doing the remix EPs following every album. Um, it was just fun to work with other people. Um, because at that point I knew it was going to be a collaboration, and so I think I was not as nitpicky as I normally would have
Hmm.
been. So maybe I can get into that mindset here for some more collaborations. Um, I don't want to. I've talked to a couple people, but nothing's set in stone yet. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself in terms of what future collaborations look like. Um, but, we had some really cool bands do some remixes for us back in the day. Covenant did one, Gridlock did one. Love Gridlock. Um, those are one of those bands that I could listen to over and over and over again and not get bored because I would hear something new every time. So cool. Um, yeah, we'll see what collaborations look like in the future. It's again, I feel like that collaboration album that I normally would do, or the EP that I normally would do, is is that second disc of a deluxe version. So my routine has been destroyed here. So I'm gonna have to figure out like, shit, what happens now? My routine is out of whack. I have to come up with something completely different now. Oh, I don't like change. So it might be it might be something that I put that I take in a completely different direction just to have fun with. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah.
My brain can't up with anything just yet. It's still drained from the last album. I don't know how long that
Yes.
drainage is going to last for.
Yeah. It always takes a different level of process, I think, like whether it's a tour or an album, like each thing definitely has its own time.
Yeah, I would love to tour again, but that's just not possible. Um,
Yeah.
the one-off shows, like I said, are gonna happen. They'll still be few and far between, but um, hopefully, I don't. My stage fright doesn't come back. I don't view it as doing so, but it's entirely possible. It just depends on the
Yeah.
experiences you have, right? So, the show in June, um, I'm not totally ready for it yet. I'm having any track that's prior to 2023 that we play live. I have to completely reconstruct from scratch because I don't have any of the old samples or any of the old sounds or any of the old stuff that I used. And all the masters I had were on DAT tape, like digital audio tape.
Hmm.
And I don't have a digital audio player anymore. And the one that I did have ate tapes, so it just ate up all my master tapes when I tried to like play stuff. So I have to
Oh.
completely recreate any track from any of the old albums. Um, so I'm working on doing a third one. So anything from Strain, I have to recreate. Anything from Viral Extinction, Belief Control, I have to recreate completely for live, which is fun, but also it's. I don't want to change it too much because it still has to be true to the original.
Hmm.
Um, but it is fun to redo some of these.
Yeah.
Some it's not as much fun, but some it's a lot of fun to redo and kind of reimagine a little bit for a live or a live experience, if you will, because live is definitely a different animal than listening to something while you're driving to work or just on headphones while you're in front of your computer, right?
Oh yeah.
And I've never thought we were that great live. Um, just because I didn't think the show had too many interesting, memorable things in it, because we didn't do a whole lot of theatrics. Um, but at this point, again, maybe this just comes with age. I'm fine with us not being the greatest live band in the world. I'm fine with us just getting up there and having fun with
Hmm.
each other and with the crowd. Um, so that takes some of the anxiety away too. When I'm just too old to give a damn, I guess. Like I don't want to take it that far, but that's kind of how it feels. I just want to have fun with it. I don't need
Yeah.
to. I don't need to go out of my way to impress. I just want to have fun.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a very liberating place to be in terms of mindset,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well, it's also. I don't want to say I'm lucky in this way because this would be nice, but I don't do this for a living, right? I
Hmm.
don't, and I don't expect to. This is a I don't want to call it just a hobby because it feels like calling it a hobby is diminishing it because it feels like
Yeah.
it's more than that. It's part of me. Um, but because I don't have to do it to make a living, in fact, it costs probably more than I make off of it, right? Um, I don't have to worry so much about doing things that I would feel uncomfortable doing. Um,
Yeah.
like going on tour constantly, um, or constantly producing merch to sell. Um, we do have some merch, but there's not much. But I see, or, and I think this is the big one. These days, you have to have a good social media presence, right? I am horrible at that. I am so bad at social media. Um, it makes me uncomfortable. I'm not really into it. I could not do what some people do. Some people are fantastic at it. Like Daniel Graves is great at it. You're great at it. Um, I'm horrible at it, and I realize that is that is going to impact the reach I have, the audience that I have. But again, I don't do this for a living, so I guess my priorities are a little different than somebody else. That's not to say that somebody like Daniel only does this for the money, right? No, he absolutely doesn't. If he wants to make money, he'd be going into a completely different industry, right? He does this because he loves it, um, but he also wants to be able to survive on it. Um, I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, congrats. I mean, all um, kudos to him for being able to do something like that. I don't think that's me. I'm too private, right?
Yeah.
To be on social media all the time. I can't go on tour constantly. I'm not going to pump out a single every couple months. I can't do that. I want to put together a cohesive album and release that at once without single after single after single. Like this new way of the music industry is just exhausting to me.
Hmm.
It's just not
Yeah.
what I'm used to. I'm old school in that way, and old school. How am I old school at this point? It's like I'm old school because I like albums, and meanwhile people are like I'm old school because I had a record player and an 8 track. What what version of old school am I at this point? That's bizarre. How the music industry has changed.
I love though that you have a very clear idea of who you are as an artist. Um, and that's very important to you. Like that is your prime focus is you're like I really want to craft music that I can stand behind, that I can express, that I can have as my voice. And I mean, like the people that you connect with and you resonate with, I'm sure like really appreciate that, you know? And it's like, and the fact that you take
I
the
hope so.
time to chat with me here and to share about, your process and, all of that. I'm so grateful that you've taken the time for that.
I'm grateful for you having me on to talk about it. It's not something I get to talk about very often, right? I don't go to work and start talking about like voice of the echo chamber. But I think also just you know being so honest in the music is important to me, and I understand that some of the things that I've released can be can be heavy. Like Voice of the Echo Chamber is heavy in terms of the content, lyrical content mostly, of course, and conceptual content. Um, it's not a happy record. It doesn't give you any release or any good feelings at the end. It just kind of lets you sit with this horrible cycle that we have in this country of extremism and violence that's getting worse and worse, and will continue to get worse and worse for the foreseeable future. And that's not what people want to hear, and that's not what people want to go dance to. Um, and I understand that. So I don't expect when I do something artistically, I'm not doing it for broader appeal. Obviously, I'm doing it for me in terms of what I have to get out, and what I have to get out is not always pretty. And I'm perfectly comfortable like limiting the fan base that I have to people that appreciate what I'm trying to do, rather than, you know, yes, we're being, played on every dance floor in Europe. I don't need that. I just need some people to recognize and understand what I'm trying to get out, I guess. And so when somebody does, that is so important to me. And sometimes I'll get messages saying as much. I really appreciate what you've done here. I don't necessarily understand all of it, but I feel this way about it, and that's awesome when somebody is getting something out of it, even something that you didn't realize you had in there. Um, and it doesn't happen all that often, but it does happen, and when it does, it's one of those things that you do remember, not one of those things that just goes flying out of your head, like all those other things I was talking about earlier.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think it's like when you really create from what feels like a very gosh, like a very authentic place. Like I feel like it's almost like holding up a mirror to other people, and for them to see their reflection and to be like, "Oh, wow. I see something in that reflection and it reminds me of being where we are, and who we are."
Yeah, I mean, if you're seeing yourself in Voice of the Echo Chamber, though, you might want to take a closer look at yourself.
That's
Right, because at that point, and that's a warning right there. Um, but that's part of what that album is too. It is hopefully, if there are people that hear it and recognize that they're going down that path, maybe that's a way that they can have that epiphany or epiphany. Apparently, hey, I need to fix this. There might be something wrong with me. I might be going down the wrong path here.
hmm
I may be stuck in my echo chambers and my disinformation feed. Um, Now, I don't expect that to be the case, but you know, maybe it can help somebody out in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such an important reflection. Like you said, it's very heavy and it's very gosh, eh, I imagine many people would be afraid to touch on that subject, but the fact that you were like, I'm going to write an album about this and hold up a mirror,
Yeah,
a societal mirror, if you will, like it's an important
yeah,
conversation to have. Yeah.
yeah. And I wanted to. I felt like I had this in me, and somebody's got it, and it may as well be me if I've got it in me.
Yeah.
I think the cycle of violence that we've been in and that we're still in is terrifying. Um, and I wanted to look at it as a from a viewpoint or systematic viewpoint, I guess,
hmm
um, and say, here's what causes these things, here's what happens after they occur, and here's what society does in response, which is basically nothing. Sorry, one second. What? Okay, sorry. My daughter has been in here the whole time with us
Hello.
on the bunk beds, um,
Oh,
just just reading. she's
hello.
she's 9.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
say hi.
Hello.
Sorry, play a video game. Anyway, I forget where we were. Sorry.
um,
You don't need that, sweetheart.
I know.
Okay.
Why do you have big beans in
Sorry.
it's okay. I
Sorry.
think
Go ahead. She's.
your video was cutting out just a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. I was. I was quietly communicating with the Wii one. So, but I completely forgot where we were now. My bad. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no, no. All good, all good. Well, we were talking about the cycle of violence.
Mm.
And
Oh yeah, I talk about that all
yeah,
day. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Yeah. The problem these days is that the levers of extremism, like the things that years ago would have taken a long time, um, don't take nearly as long anymore. That's because back, in say the 80s or even in the 90s, you would have to actively seek out extremist material. And it'd be hard to find, it'd be hard to come by, and it would take a while for you to acquire it, and hence take a lot longer for you to radicalize. These days, it's served up to you by the algorithm constantly. Um, so it's easy to access, hence you radicalize faster. Um, and it's really gone mainstream. A lot of the parts of what drives people to extremes and to violence has gone mainstream. Conspiracy theories, um, and and tribalism, particularly, has gotten worse and worse and worse. And it's not one side that has a monopoly on this either.
Yeah.
This is the same process that will happen whether you are leaning towards the right or whether you're leaning towards the left. The same steps will have to occur. The perceived enemies will be different, but that's the only thing that's really different. Um, and neither side is immune to it. And for the foreseeable future, we're going to have to be much more vigilant. Um, just seeing just seeing some of the things that are said on television, on mainstream media, sometimes frustrate me to no end, because they're playing right into the hands of these extreme wings. And I've seen it again on both sides. So when I say it's gone mainstream, I'm concerned that the division is irreparable at this point.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have a good way to get us back to we're all Americans first rather than we're left or we're right or we're Republican or we're Democrat or we're MAGA. I don't know how we're going to come back from this at this point. I think the divisions have been sown for too long. The hatred has been built up too much. And this is the fault of the media, the fault of social media, and the fault of us, really, for letting it happen and not recognizing it as it's happening. So I do have a lot of concern for where we are in this country, at least.
Hmm.
Other countries
Yeah.
have their own issues. I can only focus on one country at a time.
Yeah.
It's just there's a lot there. So
Yeah.
anyway, so I had to get a lot of that out, and I tried to get a lot of that out in Voice of the Echo Chamber. And the follow-up Voice of Reason was supposed to be kind of a segue into On Enmity. And I think it starts off a little similar in terms of um, topic to Voice of the Echo Chamber, but by the time it ends, the lyrical topics are closer to On Enmity. So it was supposed to be kind of the bridge, I guess, between the two.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like you were sharing about the outward reflection versus the deeply inward reflection, and and the fact that you took time to really reflect on this, and that it came from a very, gosh, it's like you really took your time to really take in the world. I think before you were ready to step out again.
Yeah. Well, I'm someone who really values getting to the bottom of things and really values truth, even if
Yeah.
that truth is uncomfortable, even if it's not what I want to hear. I want the truth so I can actually make policy or decisions, on the correct information,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, that has been lost a lot in our society these days. Not by everybody, obviously, but by a lot
Hmm.
of people, and that worries me. Um, I'm also a person that I'm fully willing to change my opinion on something if I'm given new evidence, right? That is
Yeah.
also very rare. these days, and that is another thing that worries me. These are things again that should be things that can help mediate some of what's going on. But as we get further and further away from them, that's where I'm worried that the damage is irreparable. Um, and I never fall into that, or at least I try not to fall in that trap of what I like to call the arrogance of certainty, where you're so certain that your opinions on things are the correct ones,
Hmm.
um, and that you have the moral high ground. Because a lot of people don't always, they make decisions based on an incomplete set of data or an incomplete set of facts, and you're never going to have 100% data, 100% facts on issues kind of like these. So there are plenty of times I've seen people be so certain that they're right about something and so self-righteous about it. Um, and that's pushing other people to be so certain about things and so self-righteous about things without any humility that I could be wrong here. There could be something I'm missing. I don't have all the information. How can I be so certain?
Yeah.
Um, so this is the world that we're suddenly in, and it came on fast,
Hmm.
and I don't know how we get back from it, and that's the scary thing to me.
Yeah.
And as I speak here, I've noticed that the sun is going down, and I'm getting darker and darker on the screen as I talk about darker and darker things. That wasn't intentional; it just kind of happened.
I love it. I love it. It's just like I feel like there's like a future album cover happening here.
Right, right, yeah.
Yes.
So dark.
Yes. But I think it's I mean it's important to again going back to like writing from a place of honesty within your music, and what a better place to be able to like share reflection than within music, like if you have that ability, because not everybody does. Like I'm sure there are people who would love to create music and they don't quite know yet how to piece it together,
Yeah,
how to form the notes and the words and all of that. And you're in a unique intersection where you have these abilities, and you've chosen to use your abilities to be able to share and express these messages, you know.
yeah, yeah. I feel like if I don't do it, I'll feel guilty later for not doing it if nobody else does, right? So
Yeah.
I feel like I've
Yeah.
kind of, if I have this in me and I think it's important, then okay, I have a responsibility to get it out there. I can't expect that somebody else is going to do it, which they very well may, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that I don't still have an obligation to try to do what I can, right? And take
Absolutely.
that seriously.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh, well, Ian, first of all, I just wanted to thank everybody in the chat for hanging out with us. It's always such a wonderful time to be able to have these conversations with these incredibly talented people. And Ian, I really appreciate you taking the time, even though you're in recovery mode. I just thank you,
Of course. Yeah,
thank you.
thank you for
You're
having me. It's been a lot of
Yes.
fun.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I wish I could watch the show, but I can't wait to see the live clips. The ones I saw from Dark Force Fest were amazing, so I have no doubt the show is going to be amazing.
I hope so. It's going to be, if it's not amazing, it'll still be fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone again. We'll be returning next week. Curse Mackey is going to be on, and we're going to be chatting about his book that he just wrote. And Charles Rehill from Lost Signals is going to be here as well
Oh.
the week after. I'm excited. So yes, thank you everyone again for hanging out with us. We're sending much love to you in the